Hello guys, my name is Amit and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'll quickly introduce you to a Vagrant workflow. When I say Vagrant workflow, that means how do we create a Vagrant file, how do we configure it quickly and start creating a virtual machine from it. So when we start creating a Vagrant machine, we start with a command called as a Vagrant init. The Vagrant init command creates a file called as a Vagrantfile. So Vagrantfile is the primary function of this file is to describe the type of machine required for the project and how to configure and provision these machines. So in short, I am looking for this virtual machine here. But to create this virtual machine, I need to tell Vagrant where is my box, what configurations I want to go for. And that's the reason we start with this process by using something called as a Vagrantfile. This is my Vagrantfile. I'll pass this file to the tool Vagrant, and Vagrant, with the help of say a provider, will create this virtual machine for me. So this virtual machine will not be created by Vagrant as we discussed earlier. This will be created by provider, but the provider communication will happen through this Vagrant. So that's the kind of a workflow that we are going to see now. Vagrant is meant to run with one Vagrant file per project. In a sense, if you want to create, let's say, one environment, per environment will create one Vagrant file. To create the Vagrant file, the command here is Vagrant init. So this is where our workflow starts. So you use the command Vagrant init, it will create the Vagrant file per project. So if I want to create another environment, I'll go to another directory and create this Vagrant file by using Vagrant init command one more time. Vagrantfile is supposed to be the committed to the version control. That's the beauty of it. As I explained in the other sessions, this one is going to be version control, means you can collaborate with your colleagues on this file and improve it over the period. The syntax of Vagrantfile is Ruby, so it uses a Ruby language to configure your machine. But knowledge of Ruby programming language is absolutely not necessary, to make the modifications to Vagrantfile, because it's mostly simple variable assignment. So nothing more, nothing difficult. All we have to say here is put the configuration in a file called as a Vagrantfile. So how does it look like? This looks like, this you can see here in this particular box. So this is the command Vagrant init, which will create a file which looks like this. This is the Vagrant, the variable that we are having. We are configuring with version 2 and we are creating a simple variable called as a config. So in this config, virtual machines box name, we are specifying something like Bionic 64 or Ubuntu 24 that we started last time. The 2 in this first line above represents the version of the configuration object object config that will be used for configuration of that block. So in short, what kind of parameters that you use here, how do we configure? It will be decided by the version here. So version 2 is now the latest version that we are using. Now once you have this particular virtual machine, you can go for providing some provider specific settings. Like for example, here we are creating a block config.vm.provider. If it is VirtualBox, we'll go for VirtualBox. If it is VMware, we'll go for VMware, so on and so forth. There you can specify what needs to be done. Like if I want to go for GUI, or what is the name of my VirtualBox here, or what is the memory that I want to use here, or what is the number of CPUs that I should go for. All of these configurations will go with provider specific block. This is called as the provider specific block here. So I'll be using this for adding one flag for linked equals to false. I'll show you that practically. Let's go to the practical implementation of it. To create a virtual machine, we have to first use the command Vagrant init. Now when you use this command, it will create a file called as a Vagrantfile. Now this is a text file. You can open that in any of the text editors. I'm using Visual Studio Code. If you look at this configuration, most of the lines are having the hash in front of them, means most of the lines are comments. I do not need them. I want to keep it very simple and very clean. This is how a simplest Vagrant file might look like. Now in this particular line, we have to specify the name of my Vagrant box. I'll be specifying Ubuntu, the one that I created earlier. Now because I'm on Mac, and on Mac when I'm using VMware, I have to specify a flag that this is not a linked clone of it. So to do this, I'm going to say config.vm.provider. In my case, this is a VMware Fusion. You can also go for VMware Desktop. Both of them are fine. And let's set this linked clone is going to be equals to false. This is needed to avoid some errors. Now let's go back and try validating our settings. So maybe we can say Vagrant validate. Now when I say validate, it will check the syntax of your Vagrant file if you have made any kind of mistakes or not. So it seems like the validation has successfully done, so which means the changes that we have done looks perfectly fine. So I can go back here and first check the status of it. I mean, what is the current status of my virtual machine? It seems like there is no machine created yet. So you can see the default machine, the one that we have configured in that Vagrant file, is not yet created. So how do I create and boot this machine? As simple as Vagrant up. Now when you say Vagrant up, because it already has specified what kind of provider it is using, see, it has picked it up VMware desktop from the metadata which is there in our box that we created in the last session. So in this particular case, whatever that we have specified in that Ubuntu, the one that we created last time, it is going to copy it into the current directory. There is a one hidden directory called as a Vagrant will be created, and it is going to keep everything about that virtual machine in that directory. Now this is the virtual machine that I'll be using henceforth. Whatever command I'll be firing, all those commands will be fired on that virtual machine. So it is booting that virtual machine now. You can see it has forwarded that port 22 to 2222. Now this is the port behind the scene the Vagrant will be using when I use the command Vagrant SSH. Now it is booting. If you remember, last time we created the box file and we kept the username as a Vagrant. This is the reason behind it. So when we are going to use the Vagrant as a tool, it by default uses a username called as a Vagrant. Now it seems like everything looks fine here. I'm going to go back and start connecting to that machine. Now how do I connect it? To connect to that virtual machine, all I have to say here is Vagrant SSH. You are done. What you get here is the command prompt of that newly baked machine. Now this is like lsb release -a. This is exactly the same virtual machine that we configured last time. So it is as simple as that. Now all you are saying here is Vagrant SSH. You got the command prompt here, and then you can run all Linux commands, Ubuntu commands right here. I do not want to do anything right now. I just wanted to give you a quick idea about how do I create a virtual machine and how do I see the status of it. Let me see the status one more time. Last time it was showing me it was not created, but because it is now created and booting, you can see that it's running at the moment. If you want, you can continue with that, but if I do not want to keep it running, I can say Vagrant halt. When I say halt, it's as good as you're shutting down your machine. So it will take a minute and it will shut down the virtual machine, and then it will probably keep it there in your current directory. If I look at the Vagrant status, it will tell me the machine which I have created last time, it was running probably, but now it is not running. So it seems like there is a created state, there is not created state, there is a running state, and there is a not running state. Not created means you did not use the command up. When you use the command up, Vagrant up, it will create that virtual machine and it will start running it. When you use the command Vagrant halt, it will shut your machine down and will give the status as not running. If I'm done with this virtual machine, say for example I was trying to do something with that virtual machine, I'm done with the experiment and I no longer need that machine, no worries, you can go for Vagrant and destroy. Now when you say destroy, this is going to literally terminate the machine. Now it is asking me, are you sure you want to do that? I'm damn sure. Say why, and you are done. So this will be deleting our virtual machine. It's as simple as that. So as you can see here, when you use the command Vagrant up, I mean if I use the command one more time, it is again going to clone everything from that box file and it will put that in your current directories, maybe a hidden directory called as a .vagrant, and that virtual machine will be used henceforth. Once you're done, you can use the command Vagrant SSH and you can connect to that. It's a very simple workflow here. Later on, if I want to create multiple virtual machines or provide the configuration software or maybe creating the entire environment, we'll try to explore all of the scenarios by using or by configuring that Vagrantfile. So it's as good as create a Vagrantfile by using Vagrant init, configure it, Vagrant up, and then use the command Vagrant SSH in order to connect to that machine and use that machine for whatever experiment that you wanted to perform. It's a very simple workflow. I'll wait for a minute to get this machine booted, and once it gets booted, I'll show you where you will find all the contents of the virtual machine in your current directory. So it seems like it is booted. Wonderful. If I look at the current directory here, you see it has created a small Vagrant directory. It's a hidden directory. So if I look at .vagrant, I can see that it is having the bundler, matches, archive loader. So precisely, if I go to the machines directory, you can find the default, and under default you can see it has got that VMware desktop, that is my provider here. So inside this desktop you can find the machine created. This is exactly the same thing you already have seen last time when I was creating that virtual machine. So precisely this contains everything that your virtual machine has created earlier, so probably this is what I wanted you to understand. So probably we'll use this virtual machine for performing our next experiments. Thank you very much guys for watching this video. I'll see you soon in the next video to perform the auto configurations of virtual machine. Thank you very much.